Hello, my name is Sergio Patricio Valenzuela Valdez, and this is Isolated Attractors. So let's start. Attractors cause attraction, collision, repulsion, and distraction between different poles of charged energies. Latour makes a metaphor about these attractors in society and politics by defining many layers of interactions between the poles decades after quantum physics observed strange attractors in chaotic systems of particles. Poles. Bruno Latour rearranged the political engagement under certain parameters between citizens and globalization time in the title Down to Earth Politics in the New Climate Regime, where the author disclosed a differentiation between attractors in the axis of global and local as the poles. Moreover, the author classifies an attractor called terrestrial has been related to the consciousness of humankind linked with the earth and nature, instead of with neoliberalism growth in the last decades. Latour released another perspective for modernity and globalization when followers got close to final arguments about climate change and, for example, how dare you in Greta Thunberg's speech in the United Nations, for example. In a certain way, the anticipation from Latour about attractors in the sphere of social science addressed the complexity of interactions in terms of today's content and how this complexity is sent from thinkers to machines to be solved. For example, quantum physics observes strange attractors in chaotic systems of particles. Maybe this is what Latour used as a metaphor about the attractors, about the power of agents and society and politics that define the interactions between the pole, global and local, with not congruence in terms of the modernity achievements. Physics defines attraction as a force between bodies made by the magnetic fields with the different charges. What causes attractions in a different polarity, negative, positive poles, in what Latour addresses as a terrestrial attractor, as the climate change and Mother Earth connection, something that Munoz Gonzalez report about Latour claims as a balance between human activity and natural processes. Perhaps the terrestrial attractor is not only a political statement about the territory or about the interplanetary space race. Perhaps it's connected with other non-scientific or speculative thoughts called as law of attraction. Distractors. From another perspective, attractors cause distraction, that is, thinking away. Attractors can make individuals distracted, where they cannot focus, not be in a contemplation, concentration mode. Perhaps it makes a difference in terms of observation if exchange attractors are activated into the field of art practices. Today, artists are focused into their own practice because of many factors: pandemia, wars, migration, political excitement, financial struggles, or gender persecution, for example. Even if they continue, they also have to face the art market and no patronage with a competitive society of succession. Isolated artists. In a worldwide context where a pandemic has killed more than 1 million people, society's structures are threatened by social restrictions on human to human contact. These isolated artists have been forced to connect virtually to the environment, a situation that creates depression, anxiousness, loneliness, and losing of social skills, all because of social distancing. Today's societies, with their own practice, are infected in the pandemic context by the worldwide news, porn, violence, and a vacuum in daily life routines. For example, coronavirus isolation caused a surge of sex toy sales based on the sexualization of social media and so much information that is consumed in isolation. What is the impact that all this reference and daily inputs shape shift the practice of artists in isolation? In regard of this question, I sent artists in a different location a questionnaire about confinement, and one of the most contrasts I expect was between the artists Patrick Church in New York and Adam Harris in London. For example, to the question I made, how has it affected your art practice? And for example, Church answered, I have definitely had more time to sit still and refine my work. But on the other hand, Harris said, everything has become incredibly slow, almost still, and being in my house or room most of the time has had an unusual effect on my work. For example, to the second question, have you found that is amplify or focus or blur your goals? Do you get easily distracted by other things? And Charge answered, I don't really get too distracted from my work. And Harris said, it takes put it in the hours of the day to a craft to not get distracted. I will allow myself a snippet of the day to let my focus wander off, but looking at the clock and counting how many hours I've been work. And the last question, it was, has this isolation changed your way of doing, approaching, making, or processing your ideas? And Patrick Church answered, having my husband at home, who has normally been in the office, has been wonderful. Isolation has enabled us to execute our ideas in a much more intentional way. Harris, from another perspective, answered, when as artists have we collectively been allowed to take so much time to work on our self-art, isolated attractors? In comparing the answer of the artist, Charge, for example, is take isolation as potentially something that makes his own business stronger than before, understanding that production and isolation are compatible. And the case of Harris is his home practice change and switch from one practice to another, from visuals to music. If attractors create distractions, perhaps the clock attractor in the case of Harris make everyday force to possibly avoid a strange attractor. On the other hand, for Church, the husband as a possible attractor is clearly more on a force of distraction, and he's potentially in favor of the goals as planned and planned aims, right? So then Latour may be correct. The land, the outside, the planet, Earth is distracting. It is a concern that even artists have to avoid to continue working. Thank you.